That's just how they print them. Right. Okay. That's that, and that's that. All hands on 3, triple tap. Who can read the aim? 1, 2, 3. It's silly of me because the aim is wrong. Max, what did we do yesterday? And we're going to kind of do that today, but it's going to look a little differently. This time we are going to create decimals from fractions. And you'll see that it is very similar to yesterday's aim and the day before that when we practiced it. Students will be able to create decimals from fractions. Converting is also a word you might hear. If it's not create, they like to say convert decimals from fractions or convert a fraction to a decimal. You can write that too. So a fraction, a decimal, Avery or Aiden, too. Talking. Fractions and decimals all represent parts of a whole. It's all a portion of a whole. So it's not the whole number. And these things look exactly the same. They don't look exactly the same, but they are the same. So 1/2 is the same as 0.5. These are equivalent. They are the same. You can make another equivalent fraction like this. 1/4 equals 0.25. There are 8 million different conversions that are equivalent from a fraction to a decimal. And there are just a few, about 30 or so, that I'm going to push us to memorize. The others are going to be converted using these 5 steps. 1/2 to 0.5 should be one that's memorized in the next week. 1/4 to 0.25 should be memorized in the next week. A few others, though, will need to do these steps. So let's read the steps and fill in the blanks if we need to. Step number 1, when I need to convert a fraction to a decimal. Avery, what do I do first? So the fraction is 1/4 or 1/4. Then I'm going to try to simplify it if necessary. You always want to simplify so it's an easier division problem for your work. 1/4 doesn't need to simplify because it's as simple as it gets. So let's move to number 3. Step 3 says what page? Numerator in the house. If you want to do like the weird house thing, I just feel like it makes it seem cool. It's like the numerator gets the house because it's on top, right? It's rich, it's wealthy. So let's put the numerator in the house, and then 4th step, add a decimal and a 0, and then divide until there's no remainder. It repeats or it terminates. We're going to look at this briefly today, probably more tomorrow. Your key player for today is the word equivalence. Underline equivalence. Equal kind of looks like it's equal in the first part of this. It just means if something's equivalent, it's the same as or equal to. So if you see a problem that asks to enter the decimal equivalent of 1/2, underline equivalent, that just means equal to. I'm well aware that we just did 1/2 as a decimal, and you should have it memorized. It's 0.5. I'm still going to have you set this up because I want you to show you the steps on one that's really pretty easy. First step is to read the fraction, 1/2. Simplify if necessary. I can't simplify it, so we're going to put the numerator in the house. Here it goes. 1 goes in a house, 2 goes outside. You're going to then add a decimal and a 0. Since 1 can't divide by 2, 1 is smaller than 2, I add a decimal and a 0. Chad. What's that? I said 1 is smaller than 2, so I can't divide. I added a decimal and a 0. Now let's divide. Start with the 1. Can 1 divide by 2? I already said no. Move over to the whole 10. 10 divided by 2 is what, Aiden? It's 5. So your answer should have been 0.5. We saw that when I marked that example in the first box. We got 0.5. You can always find a decimal from a fraction by using this long division technique. Some of them you'll have to do that, others you can do it mentally. Number 2, enter the decimal equivalent of 1/4. You know this one also, but we're going to set it up and see if we can solve it just by long division. First step, I put 1 in the house. I'm reading 1/4 first actually, and then I'm seeing if I can simplify it. Can't simplify it. Step 3, put it in the house. What's my 4th step? Reese. Since 1 can't divide by 0 or by 4, we add a decimal and a 0. Now let's see if I can divide 10. 10 divided by 4 is what without going over, Aiden?
2.
It's 2. 2 times 4 is 8. Keep rolling with some long division. I noticed that there's a remainder, so I have to keep going, bring down the 0. 20 divided by 4 is what, Aiden?
5.
And let's see if it terminates, which it does. There's no remainders, so 1/4 is 0.25. Okay, 2 pretty simple fractions. It's going to get slightly harder. 1/5 isn't going to be as difficult, but when we get down to number 4, you'll see why it's slightly trickier. 1/5 is a number 1 you should have memorized. Anybody know the decimal equivalent of 1/5? Justice? That is exactly right. You're going to have that memorized in the next week or 2, but for now, if I don't know that, here's my step. Read 1/5 out loud or in your head, and then ask if I can simplify. I can't, so let's put it in the house. Next step, Cordelia, what do I do to divide those 2 numbers? Andy? 10 divided by 5 is 2. So Justice said 0.2. Is 0.2 the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can write either way. I don't need a 0 in front. 0.2 works. Now let's check out 2/5. Anyone have a guess at what the decimal would be for 2/5? Cordelia? It's going to be 2 of these, and that's the mental process I want you to start having. Because it's just double this. 3/5 would be triple that. 4/5 would be 4 times that, but you could still always find the answer by setting it up with division. 2 divided by 5 doesn't work, so add a 0 in the decimal. 20 divided by 5 is 4. It was 0.4, so double 0.2 is really 0.4. Corbin.
I drew a house for the
Okay, are you with us though?
yes.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna pause that because it's slightly off topic, but I'd love to see it during your pack-up after you finish all the problems of independent practice. Okay, 2 more, and then you are on your own. Enter the decimal equivalent of 5/9. 5/9 is a bit trickier. Here's why. When we divide 50 by 9, something weird happens. If you notice it, raise your hand. Not yet. Not yet. Hands down. 9 goes into 50 how many times? Chad? 5 times 9 is 45. Okay. Bring down the 5. Add a filler 0. 50 divided by 9 is what, Max? What do you notice that's kind of weird about this? It's going to repeat. If you get to a problem where you do 2 or 3 digits, and 9 times 5 is 45, and it just keeps repeating, it's always going to end up with a remainder of 5. No matter how many times I do this, here's how I write the answer. 0.555 is repeating. It's never going to end. You could go on forever and have a million 5s. Instead of putting 0.555 forever, all you need to put is 5 with a line on top. That line means the 5 repeats. That 5 is going to go on forever.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow.
So 5/9 is 0.55. Let me show you a trick. Put a star over here, and let's do 2/9. Don't divide it. I'm going to give you the answer. 2/9. Well, we knew what 5/9 was. 2/9 is 0.2. Repeating. Let me give you another example. Add a star. Let's do 7/9. 7/9 is going to be 0.7 repeating. What do you notice? Daniel. It's repeating the top number. So 8/9 would be what, Silent Hands? 8/9 would be Colton. Aiden.
0.8 forever.
Repeating.
Oh, I know what you do.
There's a few special cases. Daniel, do you want to add on to that?
I know what you do.
Yeah.
Basically, you get rid of the bottom number and flip it upside down.
That's right. So the 8 is repeating, the 7 is repeating, the 2 is repeating, the 5 is repeating. If you have a 9 on the bottom of the fraction, there's a trick you can use. A 9 on the bottom will always have the top repeating. One more special case to think about. Convert the following to decimals. 1/10. Make a house. Add a decimal. 1 divided by 10 doesn't work, but 10 divided by 10 does work. The answer is 0.1. Raise your hand if you see a possible pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Raiden. Beautiful. So you looking at 3/10, don't 3/10, don't even set up a house. Just know it's 0.3. This is a problem you should have memorized pretty quickly. C looks a little weird. 2 9/10 has a whole number. Daniel, what's the answer? Keep the whole number and add the decimal. This 2 doesn't change much. It just goes in front of the decimal. The 9/10 is the same thing as 0.9. That is all. Go down to the question, is there a shortcut we can use to write the tenths? Raiden explained it really precisely. She said that yes, any fraction with 10 on the bottom, any fraction with a 10 will be the numerator in decimal form. Remember, as you're going on to independent practice, you're always going to convert the fractions to decimal. You're always going to reduce first if you can. Box or circle the word reduce. Reduce the fraction if you can so that you can get it in simplest form and make it easier on yourself. From the notes, you should have fractions and decimals represent just parts of the whole number. The operation you use to convert is division. And then a repeating decimal is just a decimal that goes on, as Aiden said, forever. Decimal that goes on forever. Your challenge for the next 10 minutes, I'll give you 8 minutes because I want to throw in a sprint. Your challenge is going to be